What's up, everybody? We're the fucking Marks. I'm Ja Rule.
I'm Bobby the Brainless.
And we're starting our live podcast here. We're going to start recording momentarily. As you can tell, Bobby the Brainless owning up to his bet, lost the bet, wearing the Ziggler shirt. It's a beautiful thing. Beautiful thing.
Sorry. Had to do it.
Boom.
And only the people on Twitter were able to see that one as opposed to the people on Facebook. They weren't able to witness the greatness that is Bobby the Brainless trying to make an ass out of himself doing the Dolph Ziggler. Also, I am supporting my New York Giants because I did say that I was going to wear the shirt during this podcast after Dolph Ziggler was successful in his Intercontinental title match against The Miz last week. Personally, I would have liked to have seen Jay wear the Miz shirt just because it means that the Miz would have been victorious. But unfortunately, the wrestling gods were not on Bobby the Brainless's side, which is fine. I'm okay with that. I just, I didn't sleep for a couple of days because I was in mourning over the loss of the Intercontinental Championship and it now being a irrelevant Intercontinental Championship, as The Miz so eloquently said on SmackDown this week. And, so yeah, like I said, I'm a man of my word. I like Dolph Ziggler. Happy that he won, even if it was at the expense of one of my personal favorite wrestlers. But can't win them all. And the never-ending Intercontinental title reign of The Miz is
Ended.
Or as the broken Matt Hardy would say, deleted. So, I'm here. I'm wearing the shirt. And, yeah. So that's that. As always, you guys can follow this podcast on Twitter at the F_N_Marks. You can also follow us on Facebook. And Jay, what is the Facebook account again?
The Facebook is the FN Marks.
See, I had to make it more difficult for everybody than he did, so,
Well, for a while, I didn't even remember what the heck it was that we did.
And
all
now
right.
for the people on Podbeam.
All right, this is episode 13, Lucky 13.
As I think it was Jim Ross said during the 1997 Royal Rumble when the Undertaker came out as number 30 during the Royal Rumble, and it was headlining towards WrestleMania 13. Is 13 the lucky number of the Undertaker? So maybe 13 is the lucky number of the fucking Mox.
Hey, it's going to be our most listened to and most watched podcast ever. I feel it. I feel it strongly. Last week we had a damn good week. I think if you combine all of our different media that we used, we had a few hundred people tuning in, so that was kind of freaking awesome.
Thank you for watching us on Twitter, watching us on Facebook, and as always, downloading our podcast off of Podbeam. Unfortunately for today, the unofficial spokesperson of the podcast will not be the 40-ounce by Colt 45. They're in the freezer.
Yeah, those are getting frosty for when we watch NFL shortly. So we have a suitable replacement. We have Fireball today. Fireball.
It is one of the two unofficial spokespersons of the F and Marks podcast. The other one being Monster Energy drinks.
He's got a regular Monster. I've got a Gronk Monster. And I'm wearing my Brady jersey, so watch it today. All right. Swig of Fireball for the working man.
For sure. I'll take a swig of that, too.
So, many big things to get to this week in professional wrestling.
Sorry.
Oh, the Fireball makes him flare.
If you're going to do it, you might as well do it with flair, right?
Absolutely. So, a few big things to get to with wrestling this week. First and foremost, the big news, it seems like Bill Goldberg back in his his way into the squared circle with WWE. Looks like it's going to be a match against Brock Lesnar.
The Beast versus, I don't even remember what Goldberg's thing was.
Well, I mean, he was the Streak, but they're calling this one like Icon versus Icon. You know, this is going to be the match that we should have gotten 13 years ago at WrestleMania, but it just didn't end up being what it should have been.
Terrible match at WrestleMania 20, by the way.
So, I think what's happening here is, you know, Goldberg can still physically do a lot of the things that he used to do. He's still in really good shape, and lately what he's said is he wants his children and his wife to see what he used to do. They've never really seen him as a professional wrestler go out there and do his thing. He wants to do it one more time, and right now it looks like this is going to be a one-off thing where he just has this one match. I'm thinking if things go well, maybe he ends up in the Royal Rumble. Maybe he lasts till WrestleMania. I don't think he's going to be at every Monday Night Raw, but I think there's the possibility that they could convince him to stick around for a couple more shows, just, you know, for the nostalgia trip, so Goldberg could have his kids see him do his thing. And I'm looking forward to it. Goldberg used to get these mega pops and hit
Goldberg.
But the dude just had so much intensity in there.
Goldberg.
He was never a great wrestler, but he just had this intensity, and people drew into his intensity, into his character.
And the one thing I will say about Bill Goldberg is he definitely looked the part. I mean, he was just like a physical specimen. It was actually kind of funny, earlier this week on the WWE Network, they were doing the Monday Night Wars show that they've been doing, where they do like an hour here, hour there. And it actually was the one about how the thing about WCW that they were worried about was they were bringing all these former WWE guys, like the Hulk Hogans and the Scott Halls and the Kevin Nashes and the Randy Savages, and it was working for them because, you know, these are household names that everybody knows about. And the thing about the WWF at the time, before they were WWE, they had a lot of young talent on the squad. So where these guys who were already established in the business were making a name for themselves, and WCW making them a popular entity, it was guys like Steve Austin and The Rock and Triple H, guys that they developed over the years to, you know, build the brand to what it was. And then it was the Attitude Era where, you know, DX was doing all the crazy shenanigans, and Stone Cold Steve Austin was, you know, beating up Vince McMahon and everything. And what WCW was looking for is, like, we have all these guys, but we don't have any, like, young,
up and coming,
you know, homegrown talent guys. And it just so happens that Bill Goldberg, after his very brief NFL career was over, he was working out at Lex Luger's gym. And, you know, Luger was like, oh, maybe you should check it out. You know, maybe you might want to consider it. And then, you know, the executives for WCW were coming down. They sent him, you know, they signed him. They sent him down to their...
the power plant.
The power plant. I actually forgot about the power plant until I saw the video, which is kind of cool that, you know...
Sergeant Buddy Lee Parker, who everybody thought was a prick.
Right.
Batista tried out there, too, at some point, and Buddy Lee Parker said, who's ever going to want to watch you? You've got nothing.
Oh, he does beat his chest like 47,000 times before he gets in the ring, but either way, I mean, like you were talking about with Goldberg as not being a wrestler, you know, Goldberg's shtick for the longest time was, yeah, he had the streak, which got to like 100 and...
I think it was like 174.
Some crazy, ridiculous number that was...
unattainable in the amount of time.
And it was exaggerated and everything, and his thing was he'd go in there, he'd throw a couple of punches, do a shoulder block, he would spear somebody, and then he'd hit him with the jackhammer. And one part of it that really did stick out.
Jackhammer?
Yes. What did I say?
No. Genetic jackhammer is Mr. McMahon's member.
Oh, right. I'm sorry.
Caught him off guard.
Bastard. It is Sunday morning instead of Saturday evening, and kind of gotten used to the whole Saturday evening thing, and it's actually more, you know, I don't mind, you know, believe me, I don't mind when we do the podcast. I really don't. I mean, if you want to do it at like 1 o'clock in the morning on a Thursday, I would do it at 1 o'clock in the morning on a Thursday. But, you know, I'm still trying to, like, I'm not in my mindset that I'm typically in on a Saturday evening. But anyway, to get back to what I was talking about, they were talking about how he finally got. They were like, well, we got to see what this guy can do. Like, see if he can like extend his matches because he's having like these 2 or 3 quick squash matches against guys like Hugh Morris and everything. So they put him in the ring with at the time Steven Regal, who's now known as William Regal, and they're like, we want you to stretch him out for like 6 minutes. And Regal's like, holy crap. He's like, I don't know if I could do this. And it showed Goldberg's flaws in the match against Regal because.
It was clunky. It was a crap match. Goldberg was just so green, but despite that match looking like crap, again, it's all about that dude's character and how badass he was and how legit he seemed.
Right.
Because, you got to remember, this is not too far out of the cartoon character age from WWE, where they had Duke the Dumpster Droese, and they had WCW had Glacier and crap like that, where it was like, I thought some of the ideas of these characters were cool, but just the way they portrayed them were just horrendous.
I love Duke the Dumpster Droese.
Yeah, I know.
That's why you brought him up.
Absolutely.
And to be perfectly fair, the fact that they put him in the ring with William Regal as to see how he can last in a much longer match, I think that's perfect. Because to be perfectly honest, if I was a superstar coming up in the system around that time, especially in WCW, before Regal, moved over to WWE, before the brand, before they kind of like bought out WCW, that'd be the guy I would want to get in the ring with because Regal's one of those guys. Say what you will, I mean, he was an unbelievable heel. He really got the heat that he really deserved because he was so good at it. Also with Regal, that a lot of people don't bring up is the fact that he's very good as a technical wrestler. I would love to get if I was a guy at that time, I would love to get in the ring with William Regal or Steven Regal, whatever you want to call him.
One of those things. So yeah, Goldberg, has never been much as the technical wrestler, but
he's a great attraction.
He's a great attraction. I think this match will be much better than the WrestleMania match from back then. I'm not expecting this match to go long. I think they're going to beat the holy hell out of each other. It's supposedly happening at Survivor Series because Goldberg now has been announced for a whole bunch of dates heading up until Survivor Series. So, and he's going to be on WWE Raw tomorrow night. So Monday night, Raw is going to have Goldberg. I hope they don't put him in the main event of the third hour. I might be asleep at that point.
I thought it was interesting because how they pretty much set it up was, Goldberg was like, there's a possibility I could fight Brock Lesnar and everything, and what they did was they had Paul Heyman come out during Raw and he cut a promo saying that Goldberg doesn't really belong in the ring with Brock Lesnar, and like what Paul Heyman always does, how he basically blows Brock Lesnar every time he cuts a promo in the ring and everything, and Goldberg goes on Twitter and says, I'm buying my ticket now for Raw next week in, I think, Denver, Colorado.
Yeah.
So that's going to be interesting. Also find it interesting that both him and Brock Lesnar are going to be together on the Raw after that on Halloween night, which happens to be in
Hartford, Connecticut.
My home, actually my birth city, Hartford, Connecticut, where I grew up for a very brief amount of time.
So that'll be interesting. I wonder if these guys are going to, just have the stare down, or if there's going to be a little physicality before they actually get in the ring. I think they should have physicality just because people have not seen Goldberg. People who are a little younger probably don't even know who he is.
Right.
He hasn't been in the ring wrestling a match since 2004. So, I mean, there are kids right now who have been growing up with John Cena who may have heard of Bill Goldberg but don't really understand who he is.
Right. It's the marks like us, who've been growing up with wrestling, when we grew up in the 80s and 90s watching it, we're the ones who are more well known about Goldberg and all that stuff. So I think it's gonna be interesting.
So, with this, we've been talking about Raw and we briefly mentioned about Paul Heyman there, but let's get in a little bit of Monday Night Raw and what went down this week there. Raw was once again one of those shows, hit and miss. Some stuff was good, some stuff was bad. Here are our notes. We look down at these from time to time. I'm going to put them up higher so we could kind of see that.
It's probably better for me because I don't have my glasses today.
All right, so we had Rusev come out at the beginning of this show, and what they're doing here is they're this was one of the dumbest things, like logic-wise, I think I've ever seen in WWE.
No, not in WWE. They don't do anything stupid in WWE.
No, never. But what they did here is they had Sasha and Charlotte trying to hype up themselves for having. They are going to make history and have the first Hell in a Cell match for women.
I'm excited for it, by the way.
Those, honestly, I'm probably most excited to see those two women in Hell in a Cell because WWE really has never allowed women to get into. They haven't had a no holds barred match. They haven't had matches where they were able to, like, physically kind of beat the hell out of each other.
Right, because usually, it's the guys have the Hell in a Cell, beat the crap out of each other backstage, and women are having, like, pillow fights and bikini matches and shit like that.
So I'm glad that they're giving them something kind of legitimate to kind of put their teeth into.
Right.
I think these two ladies are really going to bring the house down. But what ends up happening is while these two are cutting a promo on each other, Rusev comes out and ends up kind of making fun of them, tells them more or less to get out of his ring. The two girls team up, and they knock Rusev out of the ring. And let's see, what do my notes tell me? Did Roman Reigns come out? Did Roman Reigns come out?
Then you hear the burn it, and then the freaking guy with the really wet hair comes out with that stupid U.S. title that he has around his shoulder, and and then they're like, and then in Teddy Long fashion on Monday Night Raw instead of SmackDown, there was a match that was announced. It was going to be Roman Reigns and Sasha Banks going up against Charlotte and Rusev, even though...
But the thing that was stupid that didn't make any sense is Charlotte and Sasha just teamed together to get rid of Rusev because he was being a dick to both of them.
Right.
Why is Charlotte going to team up with him?
Like I said, that's WWE creative. That makes no sense. So, whatever.
So, that was a bad way to start the night. I'm digging the stuff with Charlotte and Sasha. I'm digging the stuff kind of with Reigns and Rusev, and they've got their Hell in a Cell match coming up.
That rivalry between Reigns and Rusev has been fantastic since, was it before SummerSlam or at SummerSlam it started?
Technically it started. It was built up for SummerSlam.
But yeah, the way that they've been handling this rivalry between those two has been fantastic. They've been having some pretty good matches, considering Roman Reigns is one of those guys. I'm actually surprised I get to say that, but I'm happy that they're doing it. I'm happy they're going to be in a Hell in a Cell. Really excited for Hell in a Cell, by the way.
Yeah. Well, after we had that set up, then they're trying to get over this match that they have coming up with New Day and Cesaro and Sheamus. So they ended up having Kofi go against Cesaro, and to me, surprisingly, Kofi won with a roll-up, which generally the team you see winning going in ends up being the team that loses, but I'm 100% in the belief that they're going to have New Day surpass Demolition, which they still have about another 2 months to go before that happens.
I agree with you on that. I feel they're going to pass the Demolition's record for longest tag team reign.
They've been bringing that up a lot lately.
Yeah.
Like, Demolition lasted 478 days, and I don't know why they hadn't talked about the Demolition reign before this. They always talked about the
Brian Kendrick
and Paul London reign, and then, after a little bitching on Twitter, I'm sure it wasn't just us, but there were probably other people, but, we had been bitching for a little bit, hey, what about Demolition? These guys held the titles for, 478 days, and you're acting like it never happened.
Yeah, and I remember it was you that was more of the, I can't believe they're doing this type of thing, as opposed to me. I mean, I'm not really, with certain days, I'm not really as good. I know CM Punk's was 478 days as WWE, or
434.
I'm sorry, 434. I'm 478. What the hell was I thinking?
You were thinking Demolition.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I get my numbers mixed up sometimes. But I think that's what is ultimately going to happen, that they are going to pass Demolition, which is a shame because it's I would have put the titles on Anderson and Gallows before. I did read somewhere online, they were talking about Enzo and Big Cass, about how they were so hot when they first got up from NXT back in April. I mean, they're still a very popular tag team, And they're like, well, they kind of like fizzled out a little bit, in the last month or so, and they're like, they still have big plans for him, and it's like, I think if they weren't so adamant about them trying to surpass all these records, that they would have been something special, either them or Anderson or Gallows.
So, interesting booking that they have going here. I do like when they, don't go to script as far as booking, because it makes it, too easy to call the matches sometimes. And I find that when we get to, like, Royal Rumble or SummerSlam or WrestleMania, a lot of times they actually do a better job of booking, so you're like, all right, who the hell's going to win this thing? I mean, for the longest time, I don't know how I didn't see this or realize this, but I was convinced John Cena was going to win in that first match against The Rock. But I didn't go into it thinking like, oh wait, they're in Miami, that's Rock's hometown. I thought, usually if you're in your hometown, WWE likes to beat you in your hometown, but because it was Rock and it was like, he had wrestled that one time at Survivor Series, but that was about it. In about 8 years, I was convinced The Rock was going to lose that match, but I was like, maybe we'll see. But definitely more thinking Cena, and when Rock won, I was like, but
I wasn't surprised by that, by the way.
But the thing here is, I enjoy the fact that maybe they're not keeping so tight to all right, well, this person ended up on top right before the pay-per-view, so this person's going to lose. It makes it a little more unpredictable, and I like that, because, you know what, there's been too many damn times when WWE's been predictable, which predictable ends up leading to boring a lot of times.
And I remember the first time that I saw that it was predictable was a few years back when Randy Orton won the Royal Rumble, when he went up against Triple H for the title and everything. That was it. It was leading up to that Royal Rumble, and I was like, oh, anybody can win. And then they cut the video promo of Randy Orton before that Royal Rumble, and I said, oh, that's a lock. Guaranteed that Randy Orton's going to win that Royal Rumble. So, and that's one thing that really kills it, because it's like everybody knew Batista was going to win when he came back, and the same thing with Roman Reigns.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry. I kind of just
so
hopped off.
Yeah. All right, so, we had a couple other, Bayley went against some local jobber again. Was this the second week in a row we had somebody with the last name Fields?
Yeah, it was Anna Fields last week.
And then Cammy Fields.
Cammy Fields this week, and next week they're going to bring Mrs. Fields and her wonderful cookies out to fight.
Bayley's going to give a hug to the cookie dough.
I hope so. That would be the greatest thing I've ever seen.
Yes.
And it was also, like to bring up, since you brought up Bayley, that it was in her hometown of San Jose.
Yeah.
So it was cool that they did that and everything. And after their match that she had against one of Mrs. Fields' daughters,
yes,
she got attacked by Dana Brooke on the top of the ramp. So I feel like they're going to be setting up for something like that, even if it's like a pre-show thing for the Hell in a Cell.
Yeah. You can't have Bayley keep on going against the local enhancement talent, because
eventually they're going to run out of Fields to fight.
Exactly. There's only so many out there, and it was good they didn't have Nia Jax on this show with like her own squash match. Having a couple of jobber matches is fine, but you feed too many of them into these 3-hour shows, and it gets a little bit boring. I mean, sometimes it's funny how much more of a reaction sometimes the jobbers get than the actual stars that WWE has. But
what do you mean? Is that something we're going to be bringing up a little bit later on in the podcast? Perhaps. All
right, so after that we had, usually we don't talk backstage segments, but Jericho had some moments. He and R-Truth behind the scenes.
Jericho was on the phone. I'm sorry.
Well, Jericho was talking about a payday.
On the phone with probably his agent or a manager or Vince McMahon or, the gobbledygook or somebody like that.
And he talks about a payday, and next thing you know, R-Truth comes walking down the hall. He's like, here you go, Chris.
And he had a payday.
Yeah, the candy bar.
That's not the payday I was talking about. And then R-Truth kind of walked away. He's like, I didn't say I didn't want it. It's funny, because, anything with Jericho is just gold.
Yeah.
And anything he spews out of his mouth, or even when he doesn't spew anything out of his mouth, is just gold.
tremendous stuff. But that was a great little like 5-second thing that they did behind the scenes, and
Wait for it. Wait for it. No, it's not gonna be my mark out moment. Sorry.
no, no, no. I think we got a couple other things in mind this week.
I like to toy with the people, though. I'm sorry.
So let's see. We're really winging it this week, and
In our defense, we've had family down this weekend, so we've been trying to like get all this done and
family time.
have family time and everything. So we're just not I'm sorry. I mean obviously family comes first, but we also still want to come out here and give you guys a good podcast as well. It's just that
Right.
It's been a very interesting week.
So what we had is we had a cruiserweight tag match. We had Lince Dorado and Sin Cara versus Tony Nese and Drew Gulak.
Ooh, that goes with the big news that they announced. They announced that Sin Cara is officially going to be part of the cruiserweight division. I mean, raise your hand if you were surprised that they put Sin Cara in the cruiserweight division. No, I don't see any hands raised. No.
Well, it's badly needed for Sin Cara. I mean, he's basically been the jobber for everybody else. So instead of being, a superstar jobber that's on the road all the time, now maybe he has a chance to do something that's not lose every week.
It's going to be interesting. Very good tag team match, by the way. Him and Lince Dorado, who we did see at the NXT show about a week ago.
Yep.
I like him. He's very talented in the ring. I think he's got a bright future in the cruiserweight division. And obviously, my opinion on the cruiserweight division as it is. So
yeah, I'm hoping they've been obviously now that Vince McMahon, he's in charge of Raw, but having Vince in charge of the cruiserweight division, I've definitely noticed some changes as far as in ring. It's not. I preferred how they were wrestling when they were on the Cruiserweight Classic. But they're doing a little bit more now with character development, so we're going to see where it goes. Hopefully, it ends up being a better product, but I hope they don't take too many things away from what they were doing in the Classic and kind of water down how awesome that stuff was.
I couldn't agree more with you. I hope that he doesn't affect the way the division should be as opposed to the way he wants it to be.
So, good match. They didn't do a ton as far as setting up storylines with this one. It was really just cruiserweight match and introducing Sin Cara to the cruiserweight division, which
was breaking news in the WWE network or WWE app or whatever the hell it was.
Right. So then we had Foley and Stephanie McMahon in the ring, and Foley has been a long. Not just as a talent, but as a person, his Twitter feed and his Facebook page, he always talks about how much of a fan he is of women's wrestling.
Yeah.
And, this was when he kind of officially announced, yes, Sasha and Charlotte are going to have a Hell in a Cell match, and we can't wait to see what they do. I love the fact that Foley, the mark, is also Foley, the GM, and he actually gets to play a mark on TV, and I mean sometimes it gets dressed down by Stephanie, and
or the way he dresses up, he looked like
a lumberjack and a tablecloth at the same time because
right.
It was
fantastic.
That
I'm sorry, if anybody can pull it off, it's Mick Foley.
I love that guy for so long, and I was not a huge fan of Dude Love, but I always loved Cactus Jack, and I love Mankind. I love the sadistic side of Foley more than I like the fun-loving.
Yeah.
But
the Cactus Jack matches that he had with Vader back in the day in WCW were some of the most epic matches. That's how I'm always going to remember.
Anything and everything.
Yeah, and that's what I'm always going to remember Foley for. I mean, I had no problem with him being the Dude Love character because it was something different. It was something that we weren't expecting from a guy who's got long hair and a freaking scraggly beard. And I like Foley. He's one of those guys that each and every week that he's out there on Raw as general manager that I'm starting to be more and more of a fan of his than I was before. So I think it's good.
So I like that they came out here and made a big deal out of officially announcing this Hell in a Cell match between these two women, and I think this is gonna be great for the division. It certainly gives them a high profile thing, but also having the folks in authority on the show, making a big deal. It's really helping bring the division up a couple of notches, I think.
I agree.
So then after that, we had Jericho and Kevin Owens. They came out. Then we had Anderson and Gallows, and they took out Enzo and Cass. It was just a whole schmoz.
And you can't teach that.
Yep.
Something else did happen on Raw this week. Something that wasn't broadcasted on in front of the camera. Something that wasn't talked about by either Michael Cole or Byron Saxton or Corey Graves. Something that wasn't brought up during the Raw pre-show with the panel or anything like that. No. Something else did happen on Raw this week. And you know what? It bothered me. It bothered me a lot. I'm like, that happened 6 days ago. And you know me. A lot of people know me very well.
It sat in the old noodle for the last 6 days.
It's been festering on my brain for 6 days now.
Say what you need to say.
Jay and I have been discussing for a while, like, who we thought was going to be the first WWE employee, whether it was going to be a woman or a broadcaster or a wrestler or, general manager or whatever, who was going to be the first one to block us. And I've been talking about, and I've been hooting and hollering for well over a month that it was going to be Neville, because I keep tweeting at him all those horrible things about him being a Keebler elf and how he's been away from the hollowed out tree and Ernie misses him and all this stuff. And, you pretty much agreed with me. It was either going to be him and... I'm sorry. I didn't mean that.
Well, it was... I thought it was going to be Neville, or I thought maybe James Ellsworth, or maybe the Man Scout might block us.
Man Scout is definitely one of our fans.
But I thought after a while he might be like, "What's wrong with these guys? I'm getting rid of them."
They're fucking marks.
But it was not. It was not to be. Unfortunately, for us,
Especially me.
we had a sad moment where we found out we were blocked by
WWE Universal Champion Kevin Owens.
And you know what? I'm not quite as fired up as Bobby the Brainless is about this, but what we tweeted was so, such a nothing comment, was just like a funny little quip. And
I ran it by you before I tweeted it too.
I thought it was hilarious. I'm like, go with that. That's beautiful. I mean, you tell them what you tweeted.
It's not like I said, I said something about his kids or his wife or his family, or I called him a shitty wrestler or anything. No, I basically made a comment because they were talking about him and Jericho. Like, if Jericho beat Seth Rollins in the main event of Raw, that Jericho would have been added to the match, and it would have been a triple threat match for the WWE Universal Championship. And the look on Owens' face when he said it was just like, I can't believe they said that. He looked like a fat kid who somebody just took his cupcake and ate it on him. So that's what I tweeted. I said, Kevin
But you
Owens...
didn't even say fat kid. You just
I said Kevin Owens looks like somebody who just had his cupcake taken from him and eaten on him. That's all I said. And he blocked us for that.
Talk about thin skin.
What the fuck? Really? 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 I've said, you know what? And
Far worse to far more people.
Even before we started doing this podcast, even before I've been shitting on wrestlers. I mean, obviously I've been shitting on wrestlers for years because I enjoy it. I used to call Matt Hardy to his Twitter page the worst wrestler in the history of professional wrestling. I told John Cena that I hope he fell off the bus and broke his neck. Okay? I've said such horribly terrible things to some of these wrestlers over the years. To even athletes like Josh Norman of the Washington Redskins. I told him I hope he blew out both of his ACLs and his knees. I've said some really fucked up things. So me telling Kevin Owens that he looks like somebody just ate his cupcake on him gets us blocked? What the fuck, man? I hope you're listening. I know you're not, because you blocked us and you're a fucking asshole. But you know what, Kevin Owens? After what you did, after you blocked us over such a terrible,
Trivial.
trivial thing to block us over,
Thin skin, man.
you are no longer one of my favorite wrestlers. I hope you drop the fucking title now. I don't care who takes the title from you. I hope you drop the title. I hope you never get another chance at a championship. I hope you get plummeted down to the bottom of the food chain in the WWE, where you're the one who gets fed to Braun Strowman and you lose in less than 2 minutes. I hope you get released. I hope you end up in TNA, where you're nothing.
Speaking of TNA and nothing, they might about to be nothing.
That's very true. I'm sorry. Okay, hold on. Wait, give me. Okay,
wait. Take a shot of Fireball while. We'll do a little ADD here, ADHD. So he said TNA and nothing. TNA big news this week. TNA apparently is in a deep financial hole. I mean, we've always kind of known that they've been having issues with money. I mean, ever since they left Spike TV, obviously the amount of money coming in is not as good as it used to be. They used to go and tour around the United States. You know, they wouldn't draw the biggest crowds, but they would draw some crowds.
Right.
Now they don't even go on the road. Literally, they're just a TV show. And they tape stuff at Universal Studios.
In Orlando, Florida.
And that's about it right now. So they're a TV show, but they employ a whole bunch of people. But it came out this week. The
Dixie Carter.
They're at least like $4 million in the hole, but they also owe taxes to the state of Tennessee. That's where they're based out of. And they also owe Billy Corgan money, and I believe it's Aerolux Entertainment. Both of them have funded recent Impact tapings. So going forward, I don't know how much longer this company has before they either need to be sold or before they're going to go bankrupt and WWE will just end up buying the library for pennies on the dollar, similar to what happened with WCW back 15 years ago.
And it would be interesting once they do that, how many of the guys that are in NXT, or I'm sorry,
TNA.
that are in TNA will end up in, NXT or Raw or SmackDown. I know that there's quite a few people, and it's funny that you brought up TNA. I don't want to, break off from how we're talking about how Dixie Carter owes all this money to either the state of Tennessee or Billy Corgan or to the Superstars or to, whatever the company was.
Aerolux. Yeah.
Aerolux, or if she owes to God or Dan Malloy or to
We
President
all owe
Obama or to me or you or anything like that. But something did get brought up this week about TNA that I wanted to bring up.
No.
They have the another
Yeah.
party-based TNA Impact type of thing. It's going to be
I think it's like Deletion Apocalypse.
Apocalypto, where they're going to have this like open invitation to every tag team ever made in the history of mankind and forever and ever. And Matt Hardy was going out there and people were asking him, well, some of the teams that he would like to invite. Somebody had asked him about the New Day, the WWE World Tag Team Champions. And he said that if they weren't afraid and they wanted to actually go out there and do it, and if it was okay with Mr. McMahon, he would actually show up and invite the New Day out to this thing. Somebody had also asked him about the Young Bucks, who are I think they're the tag team champions of Ring of Honor, if I'm not mistaken. I know they're part of Ring of Honor. I'm not.
I don't remember if they're. I don't follow Ring of Honor close enough. I know that they're doing, I think, a deal with Ring of Honor, and I think they're still wrestling in New Japan, maybe. So they might be IWGP champions.
Right.
I'm not sure. But Young Bucks,
very good tag team.
and they were in. Young Bucks were in TNA.
I remember them in TNA.
They were called Generation Me. I got to see a pretty awesome. I think it was a TLC match with Generation Me, and I forgot who the heck they went against. It was like 5 years ago. It was at one of their pay-per-views. Good show. The Young Bucks put on a hell of an entertaining match. They might have been going against Motor City Machine Guns.
I remember them as well.
They were awesome, but
I hope it happens. I really do. I think it would be great.
I want to see like the cross pollination of these brands. It was something we never got to see with WCW and WWE back in the day.
The closest that we got was when Scott Hall and Kevin Nash debuted in WCW, and everybody's like, "Oh, what are Vince McMahon's guys doing on WCW?" Everybody thought that that's what they were doing, when in actuality they had just become free agents and they signed with WCW.
Well,
I mean, and they
WWE
also did,
tried to do that invasion angle in
Right.
2001 once ECW and WCW closed down, and it worked to an extent, but they didn't have all the big names.
right. They didn't have the Hulk Hogan's or the Bill Goldbergs and stuff like that. I mean, they had Booker T.
And
But-
they had DDP and things like that, but it wasn't
me.
everything that it
It's
could have
me.
been.
It's DDP. Sorry,
Of course,
had to be a mark.
right.
I really do. I really do hope it's the case. Even if, I mean, Vince McMahon's going to have to swallow his pride a little bit because, you know, it's all, at the end of the day, every decision that gets made, it's all based on Vince McMahon. Vince, please, whatever you do, even if you don't send the New Day, even if you send like Big Cass and Enzo, I mean, I would think that would be fantastic. Or Anderson and Gallows.
Or how about where the Twitter war started? Get the Wyatt family,
That's even better.
because we just had Luke Harper show back up again, and he and Bray Wyatt and Luke Harper teamed up this week. I wouldn't mind sending the Wyatt family.
Also about that you brought up, I'm glad you brought up the Wyatt family and Luke Harper returning and everything. I thought it was interesting. First of all, he came back during the pay-per-view and distracted Randy. Randy got hit with Sister Abigail. Bray Wyatt.
Finally got a win.
Yeah, Bray Wyatt got a win in the main event, technically speaking.
It was the last match on the card.
The last match of the card was victorious in the end. Also, they main evented SmackDown this week. Thought it was interesting that with Luke Harper being there, he actually cut a promo.
Yeah.
And I'm glad to see it because
he's great.
I've been a fan of Luke Harper since they got brought up. I mean, I've always been a fan of Bray Wyatt since, you know, the evolution of the Wyatt family. Luke Harper is just as talented as Bray Wyatt. I think he's a good compliment. I like to see him get a chance. He's very talented in the ring. Between him and Bray, they're the two best. I mean, Eric Rowan, like I've said before, and I'll say it again, just kind of sucks.
Well, he's injured. He's out for like the next 6 months, so
big loss.
Yeah. So it'll be interesting. I hope the tag team Apocalyptica, whatever it is, ends up happening. That'll be cool. And as far as TNA goes, I hope they find a way to keep that company afloat. Just, because there's a lot of guys working there who, are really talented. You got Ethan Carter there. You got Bobby Lashley there. You've got Drew Galloway. A lot of guys who are talented, whether you like their characters or not, can do shit in the ring. Ethan Carter III, WWE dropped the ball with him. He won, I forget what season of NXT it was.
36.
But,
Wasn't he Lucky Cannon?
No, I don't know if he was Lucky Cannon, but his name in WWE was Derek Bateman. He won.
Oh, that's who it was. He was Derek Bateman. I'm sorry. Lucky Cannon was somebody else.
So
they've had so many different guys that have come in through that NXT
with
crap
different names.
With different names, like Caval was low key and
right. So a guy like Ethan Carter, I don't think ever got like a good fair shot in WWE. I don't know if he would get a fair shot now, despite the fact that he's really built up himself as, being a good performer and being a great character.
I disagree. If you're talking about guys who were unsuccessful in their runs in WWE, went off to do something else and became successful, and then came back to the WWE and don't think you're going to be successful, I'll give you a very good example of somebody like that. Luke Gallows. Luke Gallows, when he debuted in the WWE, he was the biscuit head Festus when he was teaming up with Cousin Jesse, and they were Jesse and Festus ring the bell, and then he would beat the crap out of somebody. Then he joined the Straight Edge Society where he was with CM Punk and he was Luke Gallows and talked about how drugs and alcohol were responsible for him acting like a jackass and everything. Went on to Japan, had a great run there, came back to the WWE, And he's pretty successful. Obviously, they're not getting the chances, but they would have won.
The reason why, like guys like Gallows and AJ Styles, I think have been portrayed as well as they have been, is because they did not come from TNA.
Right.
Because these guys would be unfortunately coming straight from TNA. I think Vince still views them as competition, and similar to when they brought in the WCW guys. How many of those WCW guys actually got over? And they had a lot of talented guys, a handful of them. You had Booker T, you had Rey Mysterio, and
Chris Jericho.
Jericho came before the invasion, though. He came before they had gone out of business.
Right.
Big Show came before they went out of business. I'm talking about the guys specifically that came
just came
after
Right.
They had closed shop. I would say Hurricane Helms to an extent was over, but like he didn't have a long run. It was
Eddie Guerrero.
Eddie Guerrero came before
He came in with Rey Mysterio, I thought.
No, he came in with Benoit,
Harry
Saturn,
and Dean Malenko. I'm sorry.
Yeah, they were
right.
the
I
Radicals.
apologize.
But like, if you're talking the guys who came specifically after the company ended, Vince still kind of viewed them as competition and did everything he could to crap on them. That's why when they did the invasion angle, it didn't work, because Vince wanted to show WWF as the superior brand.
Which is kind of why they put Steve Austin as part of the WCW team, because it's like, well, I have the WCW guys coming in, but I don't have the big name guys like Goldberg or Hulk Hogan or Sting, so I'm going to give them Steve Austin because once upon a
But
time
they always
ago,
had them lose.
Right, I know.
And I fear like a guy like Ethan Carter or Bobby Lashley, who, when they left WWE, like Lashley did not leave on the greatest of terms, and that had more to do with WWE than him.
Right.
But I fear that them coming back from that world would just be terrible. Like, personally, for me, if TNA does close down and closes down soon, what I would love to see Brock Lesnar and Bobby Lashley at WrestleMania, because both those guys are legit badasses. Bobby Lashley's like 14 or 15-1 in MMA, so it's not like CM Punk where he went to MMA
And got his ass kicked.
We're talking about a guy who's a legit heavyweight. He's not in UFC, but he's in Bellator, 15-1. He's still going in there and legit beating up other guys. I'd love to see him and Lesnar lock up, because both of them insanely physical.
Right.
And I just think the two of them would have a match that we haven't seen before. I think it would be more rooted in looking like a UFC MMA type fight.
Yep.
But it would feel like a fight as opposed to feeling like an acrobatic show.
I want to flip it a little bit.
Sure.
There's one. If we're going to talk about things we'd like to see if TNA closes shop and WWE buys over, I agree with you. I do think that Lashley and Lesnar would have a great match, a great fight.
And I think that they would actually treat Lashley more as a star versus like Ethan Carter, who has not done anything outside of going to TNA.
Right. I want to flip it a little bit, and I can't believe these words are actually going to come out of my mouth. Of all the guys that are in TNA, that if they get bought out by WWE, that I'd like to see come back, are the Hardy Boys.
Absolutely.
Broken Matt and Brother Nero against the Wyatt family.
As those characters. I don't want them to come back as, the Hardys.
Well, if Jeff came back as, Jeff
as
Hardy,
what he was,
I don't have a problem. Broken Matt Hardy.
He's hilarious.
Oh my God, I cannot believe I'm going to say this. Has won over Bobby the Brainless. Mark it down on the calendars. October 16th. Is it the 16th?
It's the 16th.
October 16th, 2016. Bobby the Brainless no longer hates Matt Hardy. And would like to see... Because I think it would be great. Because if they did it like when they did it with the first ever Final Deletion and then Final Deletion, Delete or Decay... If they did something like that at like the Hardy compound with the Wyatt family, and then they did one where they flipped it at the Wyatt compound versus them, would be unbelievable. Especially because they would have Rebby Sky come in there, and it's like, now's the time we introduce Sister Abigail.
That's a great idea.
Oh my
great
God!
idea.
Hello, WWE, get on it.
Boom.
That's what I would like to see, though.
Now, speaking of things that we've talked about, and we're fucking ADHD podcast from hell
Oh, who
here.
cares? Let's just keep going. Who cares?
All right, one of the things that I tweeted about not that long ago was since the NXT women's division really took a lot of hits when they did the draft a few months ago, I tweeted out several months ago, I was like, you know what I'd like to see? I'd like to see Mickie James and Asuka. And lo and behold, what do we get? NXT Toronto.
Takeover.
We now have Mickie James going against Asuka. I couldn't be happier. I saw Mickie James. It was the same pay-per-view that I saw the Young Bucks at years ago for TNA. Mickie James against Tara. Victoria in WWE,
Right.
but Tara in TNA. They had a no-holds-barred match, which was freaking awesome. And basically, Mickie James, I hated how she had to leave WWE with all the crap that they were doing to her and for her at the end. And I really wanted to see her come back and have one final run where she looked really good. And
She always looks good, though, by the way.
She does. She was like one of the, back when they were still called divas, she was one of the divas that I liked watching her because
She looked like she ate a cheeseburger every once in a while.
she looked healthy. She didn't look like, a string bean.
Well, if I eat like 4 pretzels, that's going to gain like a third of a pound, so I don't know if that's a good idea.
But the thing with that was, I'm glad to see Mickie coming back. Her going against somebody like Asuka. Asuka, I think, needs to be like a silent ass kicker.
Right.
And having a good physical match at NXT TakeOver Toronto, I think they have a shot at stealing the show. Obviously, they're going to have to reach really high because Samoa Joe and Nakamura are going to beat the hell out of each other, and I think I'm going to guess the Nakamura Joe match is going to end up having some sort of stipulation, whether it's no holds barred, whether it's steel cage or
Street
something
fight
or something
false
like
count anywhere.
because this is really like a blood feud at this point. Because Joe hurt Nakamura and had been trying anything and everything to get Nakamura out.
Also, that happened this week, since you brought up the Mickie James thing versus Asuka. Something happened on NXT this week on Wednesday. It was, because you know how, and you guys all know who watch NXT every week, how they've been doing this whole Joe's coming out beating up people just to make up for the fact that there's no Shinsuke Nakamura, even though it's his fault that there's no Nakamura. Give me Nakamura, give me the title. He beat up the guy. I can't even think of the guy's name last week that he beat up that made his debut.
Mantha.
Dan Matha.
Matha.
Dan Matha, and that really bothered me and all that stuff. He came out this week, beat up Murphy and Blake, or whatever the hell they were. Blake and Murphy, and Bill Buckner, or whatever the fuck his name is. Beat up the two of them, and he's like, give me Nakamura or give me the title, and then Nakamura's music hit. He ripped off the neck brace, and he went out there and beat the crap out of Joe, and they were fighting all over the arena.
That was a great segment.
Oh my God, it was fantastic. Nakamura's beating up security guards. Joe's beating up security guards.
I wish the security was like as bad as it is on Springer, where they just let him go.
Yeah.
Eventually, they ended up looping around. There was one part where all of a sudden Joe, the security had kind of pushed him off camera and behind stage, and next thing you know, he must have worked his way around and ran through the crowd and jumped over the barricade, and then he starts beating the hell out of Nakamura from behind, but beat the hell out of each other, but it ended with the Kinshasa. And
that Nakamura also hit on the security guard, which I thought was fantastic.
Yeah. I love when crap like that happens. It's like a melee. It just looks impressive.
Nakamura is one of my favorites, by the way. And I'm glad we got to see him in Norfolk last week.
Yeah. That was great stuff.
They're definitely, and it's, the fact that they've only announced 2 matches for the NXT TakeOver in Toronto is just fantastic. Because the 2 matches that they announced, you get Joe versus Nakamura for the NXT title. Everybody's going to want to see that. Oh, let's just throw, Mickie James against Asuka. Also heard a rumor that before they announced it was going to be Mickie James versus Asuka, they wanted Trish Stratus to come back and challenge Asuka. Unfortunately, Mickey. I mean, nothing
Well,
bad,
I mean,
nothing,
unfortunately for us,
unfortunately for the fans out there, nothing against it with Trish Stratus. I'm happy for Trish and everything, but she's pregnant, so obviously she's not going to be able to compete. Obviously, with if Mickey James is the consolation prize for us not getting Trish Stratus, I'm not mad about that at all.
I'm going to be satisfied.
Okay, fair enough. I accept that as an answer. But yeah, I think it's great. I can't wait to see what the rest of the card looks like. I also think that, after what happened this week on NXT, that we're going to see Bobby Roode versus Ty Dillinger, which is going to be a
Fun.
glorious match at NXT TakeOver. I think that those two are going to have a fantastic match. Ty Dillinger is very good in the ring. Bobby Roode, I don't even need to go into it with Bobby Roode. He's
solid in the ring, but like his character and his music are like
glorious.
They're glorious, but like those two aspects of him are just so off the charts incredible that him being what I would say well above average performer.
Right.
Just
If on a scale of 1 to 10, I'd give Bobby Roode a 7 in the ring, and he's a 10.5 to 11 on the mic.
Well, and I would say Bobby Roode on a good day could probably get up to like 8.5 or 9.
Oh yeah,
depending on who he's in the ring with. Like when we saw him with Cedric Alexander, I mean that
They
night
had-
they were both
the best match of the night.
They were the best match of the night, and both of them did their job in the ring. It wasn't Alexander completely carrying him and vice versa.
Also, since we brought up Ty Dillinger and Bobby Roode, at NXT, they were in the Dusty Rhodes Classic Memorial Tag Team Tournament and everything. They went up against Sanity, which made its NXT debut, although some of the guys I think were in NXT before, and now they're part of Sanity.
They're rebranded,
Ty,
repackaged.
Bobby Roode made a big deal about how he went out there and said we'd be a glorious 10 tag team and everything. They had their match. Ty Dillinger basically stayed in the ring. Sanity went and was attacking Dillinger, and Bobby Roode went to come in like he was going to save him. Basically put his robe back on, got out of the ring, walked to the back. Dillinger got his ass kicked. Got hit with 2 finishers by the guys that they were in the tag team with. Hell, if I remember the names, I apologize.
Yeah, well.
I apologize. Next week I will have it for you. Then the female part of Sanity went in there, started pounding on him. And then there was the 4th guy, Insanity.
Now, mind you, when I saw Sanity, you know what I immediately thought of? I thought of the faction from TNA, Aces and Eights, because they had those masks on.
Very interesting entrance, though.
It was cool looking.
It's all about presentation. Very good. The 4th guy that was still masked at the end came in there, hit his finisher, and Ty Dillinger. The girl unmasked and like, oh my God, it's so and so. Again, I apologize for not knowing her name. And then, at that very moment, after the short guy with the mask on hit Ty Dillinger with his finisher, he unmasked, and Bobby the Brainless had his mark-out moment of the week. The man behind the mask was Eric Young.
Eric Young, who had made an appearance in NXT some months ago. It was kind of curious. Like, you had heard things when Young left TNA and made that one-shot, one-off in NXT. It sounded like WWE was more interested in Eric Young than Bobby Roode because they both left at the same time.
Right.
And they thought Young was just a better overall performer, like on the mic, in the ring, as a character, all of that stuff. And they really wanted to bring him in over Roode. And it seemed like strange that they decided to not have him come back, and I don't know if that was just contract negotiations where they were figuring out the money, or if they really were just waiting to kind of really cultivate what they wanted to do with him. But seeing him in this ring, I've been a fan of Eric Young for a while. I think he does well as a heel and as a face. He was great as a comedy character in TNA. I think this is a cool way to bring him in and introduce him to the NXT universe, which for the most part the NXT guys are the ones who are the really big marks out there, so they know who Eric Young is. And hopefully people who are watching NXT now who will see Eric Young will see how talented he is. He's similar to Roode. He's a little up there in age as far as quote unquote a new guy. He's
I think
not.
he's like 37, something like
Yeah,
that.
you know, he's in his mid to upper 30s. Rude is in his upper 30s right now.
39.
So these guys, bringing them in now, it's good to kind of help elevate some of the stuff in NXT, but having Eric Young come in, be the head of a faction, it makes him feel and seem like a big deal. Having these guys come out and beat the living crap out of people and look really good doing it just does a lot of things. One, to help build a storyline for them, but it also, you know, the thing that was great about this set up a couple of things. It set up the Ty Dillinger and Rude stuff,
Agreed.
and then we have other things going forward with Sanity. Sanity has now advanced in the Dusty Classic, and who knows, like, I still think the Authors of Pain are the favorite,
I agree.
but I think this could be a spot where if they want to really make Sanity feel like a big deal, maybe they have them, you know, win this thing. Like I said, I think Authors of Pain, if they lose in this tournament, will lose on something strange like a count out or a DQ. So it's possible.
I told you what I think is going to happen with the Authors of Pain if they don't win it. It's going to be either where they get a double count out against the team they're fighting, or it's going to be a double disqualification against the team they go up against. That's my personal thing. With Eric Young, two things really quick, Jay.
Sure.
First thing, there was two guys in TNA that I really loved. They were my two favorite wrestlers in TNA. One was AJ Styles. I don't even really need to go into it. Another one was Eric Young. I fucking loved Eric Young. He was, like you said, he was fantastic on the microphone, really good in the ring, former TNA world champion. Loved Eric Young. I really did. I was a mark for Eric Young.
He was with ODB. They were hilarious together.
Yeah, and that was the only time I really watched TNA was when Eric Young was on. Number two, it's fitting. It is fitting that Eric Young is in charge of the faction called Sanity.
Because he's insane.
Exactly. I think it's great for the roster. I think it's great for the group. I love Eric Young. I'm glad he's there. So I just want to get that off.
And one thing I think that's a little bit understated here, but they made the female Insanity look like a complete badass. The
And
female,
she's cute, by the way,
that division needs somebody.
a badass other than Asuka.
And I mean, Ember Moon, they're trying to build her up, but now they have a second person that they're building up, and they've been doing other things with like Liv Morgan and Peyton Royce, Billy Kay, and all of them to try to start building them up. But I think a lot of them have a lot farther to go.
Oh, we forgot about Paul Ellering's daughter too.
But
Rachel.
I mean, she's only made like a couple of appearances. They haven't done too much with her. Like lately, the ones that have really been featured
Are Liv
Morgan,
Billy
Peyton
Kay,
Royce.
and Peyton Royce.
Those are the ones that they seem to be starting to push and make, you know, seem like a bigger deal than they were.
Okay.
So should we keep on with NXT, or do we look back around to Raw after this like half hour?
Fuck Raw. I mean, I'm done with Raw. After I had my little Kevin Owens rant, what am I going to say? By the way, Seth Rollins beat Chris Jericho in the main event, so it's still a one-on-one match with douchebag Kevin Owens. That's what happens when I drink Fireball and then I lose my mind because somebody blocked me that shouldn't have blocked me, one of my favorite wrestlers. So that's all he gets. Kevin Owens, I'm telling you right now, for future podcasts, I don't care how much of a mark you are, Kevin Owens is just a very
Shunned.
blip
Shunned.
on our screen for blocking us. Kevin, Steen, Owens, you're a blip. You blimp.
I'm gonna eat your fucking cupcake.
I'm gonna eat your fucking cupcake too, bitch. So let's just go to fucking SmackDown. I'm sorry. Let's just go to SmackDown. I mean, we basically talked about the important stuff on NXT anyway. So let's just go right into SmackDown.
Now, with SmackDown, do you want to sit there and talk No Mercy and talk about what happened SmackDown after?
I mean, we pretty much talked. I mean, I think everybody has figured out what had happened in one of the matches at No Mercy.
Which leads to my mark-out moment of the week, which was actually Dolph Ziggler, my man, winning the Intercontinental title. I was thoroughly convinced that he was going to lose.
Not only were you convinced they were going to lose.
I mean, I made the bet because he was my guy.
The cable company was putting Dolph Ziggler's having his farewell on SmackDown this week on Tuesday. So you weren't the only one that thought he was going to leave.
So I am happy to say, match of the week, I think by far.
Oh, easily.
Miz and Dolph Ziggler. And the thing for me right now with these two guys, this is the best feud I think we've seen in WWE in quite a while. It's not just because they've been going out there having good matches. It's Dolph has finally gotten really comfortable on the microphone and is freaking knocking it out of the park for me, like week after week, where we have Miz, who I think this is the best work he's done probably in 7 or 8 years. Like, I thought his initial run with the WWE title, he did a really good job of being a heel, being a dick. I think he's overall better in the ring right now, and I think overall he understands his character better. He's one of the few people, is, you know, we had talked about before we had started this podcast today. He's one of the few guys that consistently gets booed. He's a heel and he gets booed, where you get like AJ Styles. I love AJ.
Me too.
But when he goes out there, he's cheered. People love him. It's because he's amazing in the ring, this, that, and the other thing, on top of the fact that he's going against John Cena, who the marks hate.
Oh, yeah.
But you've got The Miz, who's going out there, one of the few guys who gets booed every time he goes
Who gets
out
some
there.
really good heat.
And I think that's added a lot to Ziggler trying to climb this mountain after losing and losing and losing. And they've really made the Intercontinental title
Relevant.
feel like a big, big deal. And this match was awesome. It was a great payoff to what they had been building up for. And we know that we have at least one more match to come with these two guys, and I'm looking forward to see what they come up with. After what they did at the last match, I don't know how they could top it emotionally. I wonder if they're going to add a stipulation to their next match. I don't remember.
Like Maurice on the stick match?
Right.
I'd love to get in that match, I'm sorry.
But the next SmackDown pay-per-view, I don't know if they have another one
I think
before
it's
Survivor Series. So I'm wondering if there's going to be like Team Miz versus Team Dolph, and then maybe they have like the blow-off to the feud in December, which might be TLC, so they might have a ladder match for the Intercontinental title, and that will be the last match of this. But their build-up for this, the way that Miz has really talked down to Dolph, like all of that.
Bringing back the Spirit Squad.
Right, stuff like that. They added
Making
so many
fun of his parents,
little things like that really brought this feud up, and that's why this was my mark-out moment, was they did so much to make you feel like, all right, this is the end for Dolph, and you know what? He's been a great performer, but he has not been good enough. But this one time, he was good enough. He didn't have to cash in a Money in the Bank when a guy was injured. He went in there, and he won the match, despite the fact that Maurice, got involved. The Spirit Squad got involved.
He got sprayed in the face.
Despite all that, he overcame the odds and he won. And, it was great. And then when he had the promo on SmackDown, he freaking knocked it out of the park, where he just, I was even starting to doubt myself, and then, talked about, I was going to do every damn thing in my power to win this Intercontinental title because I love freaking doing this.
And I think it's also worth bringing up with Dolph Ziggler, how he was cutting that promo on Raw, how he brought up that one of the things...
SmackDown.
I apologize. I had a few shots of Fireball. Thank God one of us is still coherent. Was during his promo on SmackDown, he brought up how he could still spray tan the back of Zack Ryder. Thought that was excellent. 100% agree with you. Not only did they have the best match at No Mercy, they had the best match of the week. They did an awesome job building up this promo, or this rivalry and everything. Agree with you with what they could do with Survivor Series. Gonna kick it off to a different point that actually happened on SmackDown. Was Daniel Bryan and Shane McMahon challenged Raw at Survivor Series, so I'm thinking that is the next pay-per-view after Raw has the Hell in a Cell, where it's going to be the Raw versus SmackDown, or Raw and SmackDown's first dual brand pay-per-view, after they really tried to separate the brands and everything. Excuse me. And Shane McMahon and Daniel Bryan challenged Raw for 3 matches. They challenged them to a top WWE or top Raw stars versus the top SmackDown stars in a Survivor Series based match. Raw's top divas versus SmackDown's top divas in a Survivor Series based
They're
match.
just superstars now, though.
And a tag team of the same thing where it's the top tag teams of Raw and the top tag teams of SmackDown. We haven't heard what Raw is going to do because obviously SmackDown's on after Raw. I'm sure we're going to hear from Stephanie and Mick tomorrow.
Sure.
Really do hope that this is what they do, or it's kind of like the Raw versus SmackDown type of thing.
Sure.
Also have separate matches. If they have like AJ Styles go up against Dean Ambrose or AJ Styles versus John Cena or somebody else that he ended up fighting at SmackDown later on, we'll get into in a little bit.
Speaking of John Cena is about
Asshole.
to shoot his second season of his reality show, American Grit. And he's going to be actually taking a bit of a break from WWE.
About 2 months.
I think he's going to possibly make an appearance here or there, but more or less he's going to be out of the picture for a few months. We'll probably see him back around Royal Rumble, as a more consistent performer, which obviously is going to lead to him.
So devastated, by the way.
And you're going to be devastated, especially on WrestleMania 33 when he wins his 16th title.
That's fine. We discussed this previously in a podcast. I'd rather him win his 16th World Championship at WrestleMania
It
than
should
the
be
other
a big
thing.
deal.
Considering that earlier this week, there were pictures that were leaked out on social media of The Undertaker recently. He was at a Starbucks, I believe, and he was on crutches. The man's in his 50s now. He's been doing this for a very, 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 almost 30 years he's been doing this. He's been through Hell in a Cell, Buried Alive, Inferno, you name it, he's done it. He was set on fire, literally, at one of the pay-per-views. I think it was Elimination Chamber. Doesn't look too good, so obviously a Cena versus Undertaker match is looking less and less likely. So unfortunately, it means Cena's going to win his 16th title.
I'm not completely writing off the dead man. I mean, we don't know anything about him.
Anything's possible.
It's possible that,
According to KJ.
he had a series, series. He could have had a surgery recently where, he's just out of surgery and needs the crutches to walk around.
Hell,
But
he could have stepped on a rock and twisted his ankle, all we know.
we don't actually know. We just know that he's been walking around on crutches. I hope the Undertaker's okay.
I hope the Undertaker's okay as well.
I hope that this match that he had at this past WrestleMania is not his last one. I would understand if it is, because it was in his home state.
Mm-hmm.
It was, to me, probably the first or maybe second most hyped match on the card. And to me was the match that actually overperformed what I thought the match was going to be going in.
Agreed.
I hope this wasn't his last match. But if it was, you know what? It was a really good last match for him to have. I'm just being selfish here, hoping that we get to see the dead man for a couple more years.
Oh, me too.
And if it's just that one match at WrestleMania, then so be it. If he's one of those guys who doesn't want a big deal made out of his retirement, so be it. I think if we see an announcement that Undertaker's going to be in the WWE Hall of Fame class of 2017, that would be a signal to me that he is done and
Agreed.
he's going in. So we'll see that in the coming months.
Speaking of the World Heavyweight Championship, SmackDown had a match between the World Heavyweight Champion and the next guy in line. Do you think it was John Cena?
Honestly, I wasn't sure who AJ Styles was talking about when he said, "Hey, I've got somebody in line that's in back, and you know what? He's ready to go."
Dean Ambrose, right?
It was not Dean Ambrose.
Randy
Rachel.
Orton?
Not Randy Orton. He was still
Bray
searching
Wyatt?
for. He was searching for Bray Wyatt. It wasn't Bray Wyatt.
Dolph Ziggler?
Not Dolph.
The Miz?
Not The Miz.
Kane?
Not Kane.
Luke Harper?
Who? It was none of them.
Baron Corbin?
Wasn't him either. It wasn't the Lone Wolf.
Jack Swagger?
It wasn't even David Otunga.
Oh, come on. Let's be serious. David Otunga is still shit, and he shouldn't even be...
Wait. With the name, but we're about to draw out of the freaking hat.
It's still better than David Otunga.
Hey,
Sorry.
yeah.
Fuck David Otunga. He still sucks.
Fire him.
Fire Otunga. Hashtag.
What we got was what I consider the new generation version of Barry Horowitz.
And our very special guests a few weeks back on our podcast.
Sean O, our good friend Sean O, who has been doing ring announcing for professional wrestling for about a decade now, who has seen and worked with many of the folks on the independent scene, and he worked with this particular performer on the independent scene.
And he said some things off camera, so to speak, and off the mic about the certain individual that we're going to bring up.
We're not going to say exactly what he said, but we'll just say that he is not exactly the biggest fan of this guy.
Oh yeah, he's not a number one fan like I'm a Hulkamaniac. Let's just put it that way.
But the James Ellsworth made his third appearance on WWE TV after him and his two hands could not handle the hashtag Sasquatch.
And then getting attacked
Braun
when he was
Strowman.
supposed to be AJ Styles' tag team partner against
I think it was Ambrose and Cena.
Ambrose and Cena. And boy, did I think that was going to be the last that we saw of James Ellsworth. I really did think it was the last we were going to see of him.
And after AJ Styles has come out and defeated John Cena and Dean Ambrose a couple times, beat them at the triple threat match at No Mercy, they have him lose to James Ellsworth.
I don't want to live in this world anymore.
Now, there were some shenanigans in this match. We had Dean Ambrose as the special guest referee, and he wasn't counting when he was supposed to count. They did funny little gimmick stuff, like Ambrose answering his cell phone while Ellsworth is tapping out to the calf crusher and things like that. They had little funny things that they added in, just Dean Ambrose being Dean Ambrose.
And that's one of the things, I'm sorry, I just want to bring this up really quick. The people who don't like Dean Ambrose, I don't get it. I really don't. He's very talented, very good in-ring performer, even better on the microphone. I've been a fan of Dean Ambrose, liked him of all the guys in the Shield. I've said this before, and I'll say it again. Cannot understand it. Obviously, people are entitled to their opinions, but in this day and age, opinions are like assholes. Everyone has one. Sorry. But he was fantastic at this as a referee.
His role,
because he kind of ripped off the shirt of the referee. Because usually when somebody's a special guest referee, they're in the back and they find a referee shirt, put it on. He basically took the referee shirt off. He started emptying out his pockets, took out his wallet, his cell phone, a thing of Tic Tacs.
And that was like a little funny quib at Donald Trump. But like they did like all that, and he's sitting there just piling it onto AJ Styles, just being a bit of a dick to Styles.
Yeah.
Then Styles takes all the stuff and just
throws it
outside the ring.
And I think it was it Otunga that actually said something funny? I think it was. I think it was Otunga.
I think it was like the one moment Otunga didn't sound like an idiot.
Since he's been part of the SmackDown announce team, he finally said something funny and didn't sound like a total dumbass. He actually made a comment that said that the referee is actually picking the James Ellsworth. And I was like, oh my God, David Otunga said something funny. Great. 6 months from now, he'll come up with his second funny thing. Hooray!
Yay!
Hooray for David Otunga! Sorry. I got a little carried away on that one.
So we had this match. James Ellsworth won, and I hear that now this week, because James Ellsworth beat the WWE champion, he now has a WWE championship match, I believe, this week on SmackDown.
Hey, he's got two hands, and anybody with two hands has a fighting chance.
That's right.
That's all I have to say.
A swig of Fireball for the working man.
A swig of Fireball for James Ellsworth being the number one contender. If James Ellsworth can be the number one contender for the WWE World Championship, why can't Bobby the Brainless have a shot? Am I next? Am I next in line?
You could be.
I'd love to fight AJ Styles.
All right, so on SmackDown this week we had there were different matches they're obviously doing to kind of set up future storylines. We ended up having Naomi versus Carmella. I mean, Carmella coming off of her feud with Nikki Bella, and it
Which
seems
is,
like
it's not over.
it's not over because she went against Naomi, and there was a distraction roll-up victory here, where we had Naomi going over. Nikki Bella had come down to the ringside, distracted Carmella, and roll up. Their feud isn't over. I don't know what their matches will be like from here on out, but it'll be interesting to see where they go from here.
I agree. I'm excited for that as well.
And they also furthered the Usos in Jordan and Gable's storyline. They had Gable going against, I don't know which one of the Usos, the one that actually... like
Jimmy J.
Right. the one that actually wears a top.
You sure? I
Yeah.
think they were both wearing a top on Tuesday.
Either way, it was the one that, dresses all the way up.
Does it really matter which one it was?
It was one of them.
And they won in a very heelish way. Whatever Uso was in the ring got help from his brother.
Yeah, like he had rolled up Gable, and the other Uso actually ended up pushing to add a little bit more leverage.
And he got the pin that way. And
Which I thought was interesting, as opposed to like grabbing the tights or putting the feet on the ropes.
right.
Having that was an interesting twist on the extra leverage thing.
When I say ooh, you say oh. Ooh.
No.
Fine. All right, yeah, again, further
So
in
they're
that rivalry.
they're building up for that rivalry. What I think is going to happen with them, if they are if that's the TLC pay-per-view, those guys are going to be in a TLC match. That's how they'll blow up this feud, I think.
I think it'll be the two of them, and then Heath Slater and Rhino in a triple threat,
It
kind of
could
like the Dudley Boys, Edge and Christian, and the Hardys back in the day.
So that could be interesting.
Agreed.
And then with the
Main event.
the main event for that show was Kane and Orton versus Harper and Wyatt, which match itself wasn't, nothing great, but it was more about the mind games and storytelling. Orton has kind of talked about, he talked about on SmackDown how he's like, I've been living in Wyatt's world, and he's uncomfortable in Wyatt's world, this, that, and the other thing. So, it's really about the mind games that they've been playing with each other. And right here, you had the match going on. In the middle of it, all of a sudden the lights go out, and when Orton's about ready to tag Kane in,
Kane disappears.
Kane disappears, and Luke Harper's in his corner, and he has his arm outstretched, and he has this, demented look on his face. And next thing you know, Bray Wyatt gives him Sister Abigail, 1, 2, 3. Obviously, the feud is far from over. I don't know if this is going to be Kane and Orton against the Wyatt family going into the future, or if this is just going to continue to be like a Bray versus Randy thing, and if it's going to be a Harper versus Kane thing.
I think that's what it's going to ultimately be. I think it's going to be 2 singles matches instead of 2 tag team matches.
One will be like a kickoff show match. The other one will be still a... But we'll see where it goes.
Don't discount Luke Harper that way.
Well,
He's better than the kickoff show. His name's not Ryback.
well, he was the kickoff show starter. Or showstopper. Kickoff showstopper. But that was SmackDown. Of the shows this week, NXT definitely probably the best NXT show probably in the last couple of months. Again, they've been kind of building up with NXT lately, trying to take it from how they took away a lot of the guys from the roster, the well-established guys, and trying to rebuild up what they are and what they have. So I think this was a big step forward for NXT. The Nakamura Joe stuff is fantastic.
Agreed.
Sanity coming in, great. Authors of Pain, they weren't on the show this week, but they're a team they've been building up. With Morgan getting built up,
Even though she lost to Billie Kay.
but you know, her
Yeah.
character really
they have
is
to-
a lot of energy, a lot of
Oh yeah, they have to build up the entire division. They can't just build up one
one
woman
person.
in the division. They have to build up more than one because you can't just have Asuka versus here. Let me just randomly pull a name out of my hat. Billy Kay. Let me pull a name out of my hat. Liv Morgan.
Yeah.
You know, it's how they. It's the only way they're going to build a division is if they get these women to go over on each other, and everything. And I agree with you on that. NXT was the better show of the week this week. Definitely think that the Miz and Dolph Ziggler was the best segment of the week.
Yeah.
I
Well,
mean,
they had
other
the best
than-
match on No Mercy. They had a great segment on SmackDown.
I forgot. I'm sorry. Chris Jericho with the payday.
Chris Jericho with the payday was fantastic.
Should have been my mark out moment, but it wasn't. Thank you, Eric Young.
But, you know, SmackDown definitely a better show than Raw. Raw was just, again, some illogical crap going on. Overall, the direction of Raw, I think, is spot on what they need to be, but some of the decisions, like, in show, need to be better and more thought out.
Oh, I fully agree with you on it, and they have that piece of shit as their Universal Champion. Which is funny because a week ago I wasn't feeling this way, but Kevin Owens is a piece of shit.
But Jericho is still the
I
greatest
still
of all
love
time. His best
I
friend.
still love you, Chris Jericho, even though you won't respond to me on Twitter. But anyway, we talked about the pay-per-view.
Yeah.
We talked about Raw.
We got our mark-out moment of the
We
week.
got the mark-out moment of the week.
We talked No Mercy.
We talked NXT.
TNA.
We talked about Survivor Series.
We talked about Goldberg returning.
Hell, we even talked about the Royal Rumble
We
and SmackDown. Did we forget anything this week, Jay? Is there anything that we should have brought up during this podcast that we have not brought up thus far during said podcast?
What could you be talking about?
I think today, October 16th, 2016, at an incredible, you don't have to point it out to me, I should know the number off the top of my head anyway, at 600, don't put it in my face, Jason, at 630 days.
By the way, I looked it up today just to double check. It is like 54 million seconds.
You have that kind of time, don't you?
Well, when I was double checking my research, I couldn't find exactly where last week's notes were for the show.
That's kind of weird.
So I ended up, putting into the Google machine, how many days ago Curtis Axel entered the Royal Rumble.
And
I found out not only days, but it showed seconds, minutes,
hours,
all of that. And I was like, 54 million seconds. That's impressive.
And at 54 million seconds, the son of WWE Hall of Famer Mr. Perfect, Curtis Axel, is still alive in the 2015 Royal Rumble. Boom.
And that's the final note of episode 13 of the Fucking Marks podcast.
Mm-hmm.
I'm Ja Rule.
I'm Bobby the Brainless. Mark out with your guac out.
See you
Next week. Fantastic. I'm happy with that.
We got a lot of shit in, and even though we were like kind of jumping around, we were jumping around